Hello, welcome to Retro Rottie, your warm and friendly home of retro tech nostalgia and perhaps discovery. What brings me to the fireside at the Retro Rottie cottage with my Rottweiler or Rottie princess here? Well, A, it's freezing outside, and B, it's a Retro Rottie Discussion week, and we've selected a very popular topic. So we hope many of you will find the time to listen to a few brief ideas, designed as food for thought, nothing more, and then contribute your own views to the Retro Rottie community. As always, friends, Retro Rottie needs you. So what is the vinyl music format and how long has it been with us? The name vinyl comes from the material of which the discs are made, essentially a hard form of plastic with quite unique properties, suitable for the cutting of microscopic grooves, capable of reproducing the music inside a larger spiral tracking groove. Vinyl records are of course played on a turntable, or to use the old-fashioned term, a phonograph with a stylus, occasionally called a needle, which rides in the tracking groove of the disc. If the turntable is revolving the disc at the correct speed, this will cause the magnetic cartridge on the tone arm to imperceptibly vibrate to the sounds engraved in the microgrooves, and in so doing induce tiny electric currents which are passed to a phono preamp stage and then to the amplifier and speaker system. In the long history of phonograph recordings, during the late 1940s and 1950s, vinyl came to replace as the dominant material another form of plastic, technically a natural form of wax secreted by the female lac bug, called shellac. If you've heard of 78s, that's records that play at 78 RPM speed. They were made of shellac and on sale from roughly the 1890s to 1950s. Even earlier forms of phonograph recordings, available around the late 19th century, were wax cylinders and various metallic foil systems, but these never achieved mass-market adoption. Vinyl has the possible disadvantage of being a little too prone to an accumulation of static charge, which in turn attracts dust, which can clog the sound grooves and is the arch enemy of the vinyl enthusiast. In all other respects, vinyl was a great leap forward, being much lighter and far less brittle than shellac, offering much longer playback times and greatly improved audio fidelity, with a much better signal-to-noise ratio. Thomas Edison is usually regarded as the inventor of the phonograph, at least of the first practical working version, in 1877, although by then at least two French inventors had filed designs under different names, such as the phonautograph and the paléophone. To our next question. Is there any evidence to suggest that the record industry has made several attempts to consign vinyl to the history bin in favour of higher profit margin formats or new revenue stream models? In a word, yes. Stacks of it, in fact. At various times, the majority of the largest record label conglomerates have decided to hitch their fortunes to the cassette, the CD, the legal digital download stores, and finally, the music streaming services. Here are some of the tactics they've tried since the 1980s. In 1984, major labels changed the rules. Record stores could no longer return unsold vinyl to distributors. CDs remained fully returnable, so for the store manager, they became the much less risky option. The wholesale price of vinyl albums was raised by $1. For CDs, it was cut by the same amount. For managers of lower volume stores, this sudden reversal in profit margin would have forced their hand. The result? Record stores that once held 30,000 vinyl records at a time flipped their entire inventory to CDs in under 2 years. By 1989, the Sony CBS group stopped making vinyl entirely. They wouldn't press another record for 28 years, restarting production only in 2017. The BBC noted that Sony today struggles to find enough engineers with the knowledge to make vinyl records. Many of the surviving skilled individuals have probably already been snapped up by their rivals. Here's the twist though. Indie or independent labels kept vinyl alive. They proved there was a market, they proved there was demand, and eventually they dragged the major labels, kicking and screaming, back into vinyl. It's interesting that not all the giant labels had quite the same attitude to vinyl. Warner was the only major to join the new millennium's vinyl revival almost from the start. It wasn't quite so quick as the others to abandon it first time around. Despite these concerted efforts from powerful companies, vinyl releases are still with us. They've outlasted the pre-recorded cassette, the CD, the mini-disc, the iTunes Music Store. These days, even Spotify, the streaming service built on the premise that we'd never need to own music again, runs a store selling limited edition vinyl box sets. And in the 2020s, vinyl sales are rocketing once more. Take a moment to let these juicy stats sink in. In 2006, vinyl hit rock bottom with only 1 million records sold in the entire United States. The format was nearly dead. But then something remarkable happened. Sales have grown every single year since 2006, an unbroken growth streak of nearly 2 decades. By 2022, vinyl LP sales outpaced CD sales for the first time since 1987. In 2023, over 43 million vinyl records were sold in the US alone. That's a 43-fold increase from the 2006 low point. In Britain, 5.9 million records sold in 2023, the highest in over 3 decades. So how has a bulky, heavy, expensive, admittedly quite durable in some ways, but in others quite fragile format, with its roots in late 19th century technology, managed to survive more orchestrated attempts to kill it off than Fidel Castro? How does it keep achieving more comebacks than Rocky? Why do so many of us today love it? What is so joyful about music packaged this way? Retro Rottie is based in Great Britain, or Vinyl Island, or Hi-Fi Island we might call it, where homes are less than half the size of their American counterparts, but devotion to vinyl is even stronger, where young people with the least living space and the least spare cash are choosing the bulkiest, most expensive music format. Why? Well, it's probably more complex, but in short, the biggest single answer appears to be mental well-being. Vinyl represents an escape from the stresses of their always-on, 24/7 digital life. A yearning for something tangible when many have grown up with so few things they could hold on to or depend upon. While this vinyl collecting as therapy phenomenon is slightly more concentrated in the United Kingdom, it's a pattern broadly shared across other Western nations such as Germany and the United States. According to a survey of Gen Z young adults across the US, the UK and Germany, 61% use vinyl to improve their mental well-being. 50% cite the need for, quote, a break from digital life, end quote. A couple of years ago, a study of a subset of Gen Z, those then aged 18 to 24, revealed 76% of them buy vinyl at least once per month. That's higher than millennials. It's higher than Generation X. They're choosing inconvenience over convenience. And they're doing it while mostly living in tiny, cramped accommodation, moving constantly on tight budgets. The generation that's supposed to value experiences over possessions is buying the bulkiest music format. Why? Much as we found in the British data, Western young adults more generally seem to be using vinyl records as a form of therapy to aid their mental well-being. If it's playing such a vital role in these difficult times, then some of us retro heads might become even more fond of the old format. As if we needed a good excuse. What about sound quality? Let's start the ball rolling with a purely personal set of recollections. Vinyl has always sounded rather better than CD, to me, always assuming, of course, a super clean, unscratched disc and a well-configured, reasonable quality turntable setup. And here's why. Paradoxically, the instruments of a band sound both more individually distinct and yet more warmly knitted together into the whole. I hear many more beautiful small details in the bass frequencies especially, but often in the mid and treble, high ranges too. The overall sound is just somehow more comforting and enjoyable, purely to me. Back in my musical days, when I still practiced guitar daily and sometimes performed publicly, I found that if I listened to a song on vinyl, I would only need 1 or 2 listens to be able to learn to play it by ear. But if I listened on CD or iTunes, I would still be able to learn it by ear, but it would usually take several more listens to sink in. But this is just how I remember it. My personal anecdotes do not constitute scientific proof, and I'm probably not the average listener. I'm a former musician who is quite noticeably autistic and perhaps resultantly grew up with perfect pitch and in some ways and certain situations quite exceptional hearing, mixed in with a boatload of complex sensory difficulties. And I'm certainly not a professor, so you probably shouldn't take my word for it. Let's see what the scientists have to say. Scientific studies state that digital audio of basic CD quality and above is objectively superior to vinyl sound by all the measures they use. I'm happy to admit that I have long been a firm believer in the superiority of analog recording and playback, so this revelation came as quite a shock to me. Key points from the scientific findings include: the signal-to-noise ratio of CDs is around 100 times greater than that of a typical vinyl record in good condition. The sampling rate and bit rate of even the most basic old CDs are more than sufficient to hide any gaps left by the analog to digital conversion process. Studies indicate that these gaps are far too minuscule to be detected by typical human hearing. Some vinyl advocates have long claimed that many high frequencies are lost in the process of digitizing music. Scientific tests have found that as humans gradually lose their hearing throughout their life, it is generally the high-frequency part of the spectrum which is affected first. And in fact, under laboratory conditions, very few adults appear to be able to hear anything over 16 kHz. Studies have led to the fine wine or perception bias thesis, a form of the placebo effect, which states that people are often predisposed to assume that vinyl sounds better because that's what they've been told for most of their lives, so their brain convinces their ears that it does, at least when they can see, or are told, that the recording is coming from a turntable. This concern over bias led scientists to design blind tests. Participants who previously expressed a preference for the sound they could see to be coming from a vinyl record over that from the equivalent CD are retested in a controlled environment where they can't know which sound sample is the vinyl. Apparently, in these testing conditions, where perception bias has been eliminated, far fewer test subjects claim to be able to tell any difference between the analog and digital sources. Perhaps the most alarming study found that at virtually any price point, even the expensive as a car price point, phono cartridge manufacturing is inherently a difficult process, prone to inconsistencies, and that an average of 1 in every 8 cartridges sold to consumers is in some way deficient relative to its specified performance. That horrified me. I really don't like those odds. I really hope a scientist somewhere has made a mistake and that's not quite true. How else will I sleep at night? If the scientists are right, and the sound quality is not truly superior, as so many of us have long believed it to be, what other reasons are there for loving vinyl? The 12-inch LP format in particular, but to some extent all vinyl records, provide a range of very tangible pleasures quite separate from the audio. There's the large-scale artwork that will never seem quite right when scaled to fit any other playback medium. Sleeve notes containing lyrics or additional poetry or prose or quality photographs are all presented properly. There's the unique smells released whenever an old record is slid out of its anti-static envelope after a long spell in storage. These smells can be quite reminiscent of an antiquarian bookshop. Perhaps most of all, there's the slow-paced rituals, the careful handling of the sleeve and inner sleeve, and of the disc by its edges and the spindle hole, the cleaning with special brushes, the gentlest lowering of the tone arm until the stylus begins to kiss the grooves where the music lives. And is that the key to the secret? Does vinyl's indistinguishable popularity, decade after decade, lie largely in the fact that some, not all, aspects of it do perhaps defy rationality and reason, at least for some of its fans living in some circumstances? Is that what makes it magical, almost an article of faith, for so many who draw comfort each and every time they carefully release the disc, clean it, and lower the stylus very slowly into the groove? What drew you to vinyl when streaming services offer instant access to millions of songs? Especially curious to hear from the under-30s on this one. Do you have a vinyl record that's been with you like a faithful old sheepdog through all of life's thick and thin, one you couldn't ever imagine parting with? Can you think of any other music media formats that perhaps have similar therapeutic properties or inspire comparable fanatical devotion, even if only in yourself or a couple of people you know? It doesn't matter if you're a lone voice. Retro Rottie respects you and wants to hear from you. Just for example, have any of our new friends had any hands-on, or should that be ears-on, experience with reel-to-reel. How does that compare to vinyl? Retro Rottie is no great expert on that, but it sure looks fascinating. So if you have any questions, or any answers, or anything to contribute regarding the fascinating topic that is the vinyl record format, Retro Rottie would love to hear from you. A quick note for anyone interested in the source material underpinning this video: a selection from the major sources is listed in the video description below. If you would like the full list, contact Retro Rottie by email. Due to time constraints, much of the research was AI assisted. The script is my own words, and the big ideas behind the questions were all mine, but I couldn't have found, filtered, sorted, and summarized so much information with so many stats in time for this production without some assistance. At Retro Rottie, we love to give credit to others every week, and that includes to you. That's all we have time for today, friends. Thank you so much for your kind attention. I so look forward to spotting your contributions to the Retro Tech discourse. And remember, if someone somewhere still loves it, it never really dies. Long live Retro Tech. Until next time, it's a goodbye from me. Stay well, everyone.